Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fit Chicks Chat. My name is Amanda Quinn.
And my name's Laura Jackson.
And today's podcast, we are talking specifically about things that you need to be thinking about when you're going into your 40s when it comes to your health and wellness. The reason why we're talking about this too is because for those of you who are not already aware, our holistic menopause certificate program is starting on March 21st. So it's starting this week. And if you've been curious about diving deeper, if you're a coach or if you're someone who is trying to learn how to, whether it be shift your own habits around your health and wellness, especially when it comes to menopause, or help your clients, you want to check it out. You can go to fitchicksacademy.com/menopause to learn more. Um, but really, what we're going to be talking about today is just some really simple strategies and habits that you can be thinking about if you are someone who is in your 30s and you're shifting into your 40s and you're like, okay, what are like the important ones that I need to have in place? Or if you're someone who is in your 40s or going into your 40s and you're thinking, okay, I haven't really been focused on my health, or I know I really want to kind of dive deeper into this. These are simple things that you can do and that you should be doing going into your 40s to help you have optimal health and well-being as you continue to age gracefully. And so the first thing is probably one of the ones that I know that you and I, Laura, like we're very big on is really just stay focused on your movement. And staying focused on your movements means not necessarily like, working out for an hour a day or like doing the old stuff that you maybe were doing for many, many years. When I say stay focused on movement, it's like your movement can actually, and this is actually an important thing, is that your movement can and probably will start to shift and change what that looks like as you begin to age, right? And I'm not saying you're like getting super old at 40 or anything like that. Like I'm 45 and it's like, but I've noticed that my not necessarily my desire for training, but the way that I train has shifted a lot from like my 20s to what it looks like now. But what we really want to be thinking about is just staying focused on it. So staying focused on movement means, moving your body daily, adding in a lot of like the neat stuff, right? Which we've talked about before on the podcast, which is like the non-exercise. Oh my gosh, why do I always forget the A?
Activity,
Non-exercise
thermogenesis.
activity. I always want to say athletic, but I know it's not that. But which is like more just like about the day-to-day movement of like, going for a walk or walking to check your mail or going to the grocery store and walking down every aisle or whatever it is. It's like just adding more movement to your day-to-day. But also the bigger thing is focusing more on strength training. So as we begin to age, as we've probably already heard many times before, when we age, our bone density starts to decrease, right? Our muscle mass starts to decrease. And so what we really want to be doing is focusing more on strength training. And I don't know about you. Well, actually, I do know because I know you're training and I know how we both shifted gears so much. When I was younger, I did so much cardio. Like I was like a cardio machine.
Yep.
And now as I begin to age, I feel like I do less and less cardio as the weeks go by. I don't know about you. I know it's just like it's definitely more of a focus on, for me at least, it's like strength training and mobility training. Those are like my two big ones. And then cardiovascular training for my heart health, but not necessarily for what I thought it was going to be when I was younger.
Well, yeah, a lot of women especially get into cardio training because, way back in the day when aerobics came out, it was like that is how you burn the most calories, right? Is you do a 60-minute aerobics class and it's all about losing weight and burning the most amount of calories. And then obviously as
Mhm.
research and time went on, we realized that that's actually not the case, that too long of cardio actually works in the opposite way and can eat a lot of our muscle, which is one of the things we want to preserve the most, right? So it's using your cardio strategically, but then really focusing on that that strength training, that resistance training, that heavier lifting. So, and I know still to this day, it's like a lot of women hear that and they're scared because either number one, they've never lifted before and they think they're too old to start, or they've already
Mhm.
been exercising, but they have, maybe been doing some lighter weights, but never took the leap into challenging their bodies more. So there's this kind of, fear around that, or just the whole stigma around, oh, well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Why would I start doing that now? Right. So it's kind of like I think with strength training, we're still in a place where a lot of women are knowing the benefits of it, but not yet dipping their toe in that. And I know for me, it has
Mhm.
just been, it's something that since my probably my cardio age was, younger 20s, like teenage years, and then more into my 30s, like late 20s, 30s, and 40s is when I really started focusing on my strength training and challenging myself,
Mhm.
not just doing, 2 pound weights and doing bicep curls, like pushing myself. So I'm constantly making sure that my muscles are being challenged. And also the thing is too, is that when we do that, we're not just again getting stronger, we're maintaining our muscle mass, which is so important as we age. Like you said, it breaks down, over the age of 35, it starts breaking down faster and faster as we age. So it maintains that, but also is just so important in our bone health as we age, in our the quality of our life. Like as we age, the muscles that we keep are the things that are going to keep us young. So
Mhm.
I really, really think that it's one of the ones, if you're starting your workouts or shifting your workouts, really consider strength training and heavier resistance training.
Definitely. And I think the next thing is to focus more on hydration. Now I know hydration has been kind of like that buzzword, but buzz topic for a while now when it comes to like overall health and wellness, where people, you see everyone walking around with those big jugs for their water bottles, and like they have like the ones that have the lines that kind of indicate how much you should be drinking and throughout the day and where you're at and all those kinds of things, because it's been such a hot topic, recognizing how important hydration is. But as we age, our metabolism starts to slow down. And so we actually need to hydrate even more to continue to like keep it boosted throughout the day so that your body is constantly in like internally in motion, essentially. And so we want to keep drinking as much water as we possibly can. Now I know that there's going to be people listening that are like, I drink a lot of water, or how much do I need to drink, or I don't like drinking water, or I find it's too much. Like I feel like I have to pee every 5 minutes and that kind of thing. And so keeping in mind too that water doesn't have to, number one, it doesn't have to be boring. You can make it interesting. You can add, some like fruits or veggies or some like fresh basil or things like that, like to your water to make it like flavored in some way. So some natural flavors, but also remembering too that there's a lot of water rich foods that also account for hydration. Now you can't like measure it the same way that you would measure like a water bottle or something like that, but you can definitely just start being more aware of increasing your intake of those kinds of foods. And so those kinds of foods for hydration purposes would be things like cucumbers, peppers, squash, so so greens as well, also berries, citrus fruits, tomatoes, watermelon, like anything that's kind of like really, I always think it's like the juicy stuff, right? Like anything that's got like that juicy kind of flavor to it. Those are generally a little bit higher when it comes to hydration. So they're a little bit more of like a water-based food. And so they're going to increase your hydration as well. And Laura, what would you say, like in terms of, because I know that they always say it's like 8 glasses of water a day, but that can be confusing for some people because they think like, well, what's a glass and how much is that? So I know for me, I like to try to drink 3 liters of water a day. That's kind of my goal, is 3 liters. What about you? And what do you recommend as a holistic nutritionist?
Yeah, I always say, I mean, and again, it does depend, and I think sometimes we get just too caught up on numbers. So
Totally.
I like to use like 2 to 3 liters is like the rule of thumb. But again, if you're someone who's 5 foot versus you're someone who's, 5'10" and you're super active and work outdoors in the heat, depending on what country you live in, the climate, you will probably need more water than someone who lives, let's say, in Iceland in like the freezing cold, and then also maybe as a different body shape, right? Maybe you're 5 foot. So there are some ways, but like if you just kind of go for the standard 2 to 3 liters, 3 liters being the goal. And if you're first starting out to consuming more water, don't, jump right into the 3 liters. Start with, if you're new to it, again, if you're not drinking, just even try to get to 1 liter a day. I just find 3 liters is easy too because I always drink out of a 1 liter mason jar when I'm at home,
Yeah,
or a
same.
1 liter water bottle. So I just know if I drink 3 of these throughout the day and I just have it with me all day long, that I'll hit my water goal. So I find
Mhm.
that really simple. But again, if you're brand new or you feel like you're going to the bathroom all the time, just start with a lower amount and get your body used to it.
I find too, for me, one of the things that really helps me to get my water intake in is when I have meetings or anything like that in the mornings, I always have my water bottle full and I just chug it during the meetings. Like throughout the entire meetings, if you've ever noticed that, Laura, in our meetings, I'm always like chugging my water bottle because I'm like, okay, if I can get one of these done, it's like already a liter in, right? And I'm in my meetings and I'm focused or whatever, but it's like it just I'm already sitting still, right? So I have to kind of it just allows for me to do it really easily.
Well, and that's what I
Um,
always find too. I find if you kind of, and this is something we talk about this a lot in our certifications because we talk a lot about habits and actually implementing the habits. So having different
mm,
cues and things like that. So I know I'm the same way. Like I kind of try to hit 1 liter by 10 a.m. And then I try to
yeah,
hit the second liter like by 12, between 12 and 1. And then I'm like, oh, I've already done two. So then it's kind of like the rest of the day I'm not feeling as, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I have to catch up and drink. Because I've had that happen to me where I didn't drink any water in the morning, and then suddenly it's 2 o'clock. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to drink 3 liters of water.
yeah.
And then also thinking too, I know you're mentioning some different foods, but there's other drink options that are water, like herbal teas are a
Oh,
great
totally.
source of water, right? And so if you're alternating between, or at nighttime you're having herbal teas before bed, like you're probably drinking another 250 milliliters to 500 milliliters, depending on how big your mug is, of tea. So, there are ways to get it in, but I always like to have those kind of times that I'm like, okay, this is if I can do this by this time, and then it just becomes second nature. Like the more you incorporate it, the easier it is, and then you're like, wait a second, this is just what I do every single day now.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think, yeah, just for me, I always have like those targeted times as well. Now, the next thing that when we're thinking about like incorporating, whether it be simple habits, incorporating them new into your routine, or if it's sort of, transitioning from like your 30s to your 40s and things that you should be doing, I guess this is probably the biggest one for me. And I've noticed this massively since turning 45 is to focus on my sleep. And I don't
Yes.
know if you like for me, it's been so big. I remember like in my 20s, in my 30s, operating on like 4 hours sleep. I was like, I wasn't my best, like by any means. Like I wasn't like at my top tier at that point, but I could do it. I could make it through it. I could even make it through it for a few days in a row on like a very minimal sleep. And just felt like it was like laissez-faire, no problem. And then now if I don't get like a minimum of I like to get like 8 or 9 hours sleep, sometimes even 10. But if I don't get at least 7 hours sleep, I find that I'm like irritated, I'm cranky, I get frustrated easily, my brain feels foggy, my body feels tired, but also I crave lots of like different foods that I don't normally eat. I just want to eat like those fast, quick fix foods because I'm hungry and I get hangry. Like it's just it throws everything off. And
Yeah,
so
100%.
we need to be focused on that, especially because our hormones are changing so much as we're entering like our 40s, going into our 50s, like our hormones are shifting, everything is shifting and changing. And when we're not getting the proper sleep, we're not giving our body the opportunity to repair, to restore, to rejuvenate, and to balance out all of our hormones, right? Because like our sleep is when our body goes into like regroup mode. Like it's like, okay, time to regroup and like focus back on like optimizing everything. And so when we're not getting enough sleep, we're not giving our body the opportunity that it needs to be able to put us in a state for the next day to feel really optimal. So sleep has been like it's just been such a massive thing. I never really focused on it, if I'm being honest. Like I never really cared that much. I was always like, I'm fine. I can operate this way. And now I'm like putting putting Mads to bed and I'm like, good night, like falling asleep before she does. Like just
Yeah,
like
like
almost every night.
I remember growing up and being like, "Oh my gosh, how do people go to bed at like 9:30?" And now I'm like, "Oh my
Right?
gosh, I want to go to bed at 9:30." Like, but
Totally.
also I feel like too because my lifestyle has shifted and I love getting up earlier and I feel like, I'm so much more productive in the mornings, whether it be in my work or my household or whatever, when I actually do get a good sleep in advance
Yeah.
instead of feeling like I'm going to bed late and then I'm playing catch up the next day and then I'm waking up tired and it just becomes this cycle. But one of the things too is like, as you were saying, as our hormones are changing, it is a hard for a lot more women to actually be able to go to sleep. And
True.
also during the ages of, in our 40s and into our 50s is usually the peak time of our life where we have the most amount of stress, right? We have external stress, whether we have kids, small kids, or we have kids that are away at college. Maybe you're in a household where you have both ends, like the bookend, you have kids and you have your parents living with you. Our careers are usually at their pinnacle. So we're working a lot. Like there's so many things that kind of hit at a head. And this is also the time
So
too
true.
when we're perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, right? So it's even more important for us to focus on sleep, but even harder to because the stress is amplified. Also, the hormonal shifts are amplified where we could be waking up between, with hot sweats and hot flashes and all of those things too. So that's why, as well, we're not going to get into all of that, but if you are in that stage, learning the tools to be able to support your body in that, to be able to allow yourself to get that 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and what you need to do to support all of the systems that are involved, because it's so important. And I think a lot of times too, it's like, and I never really thought about this even until I got into it, was just the idea of how important really understanding the level of responsibility at this stage of life, how that's affecting your health and your wellness goals. Like, I didn't really get it until I really started diving into, till, well, number one, till I hit that age. And then number two, still I really started diving into the long-term effects of it too. And just the stress and the mindset piece alone is so important. So many of us can't sleep because our minds are running and spinning. So,
True.
learning some tools to be able to manage stress and mindset, and then also to be able to set up your space and your hormones to support sleep is so important.
Mhm. No, it's so true. And that's actually, I mean, that's one of the other ones that we'll just jump into right now because it makes sense to just talk about that because you're talking about mindset and everything else. And that's actually one of the other things too when you're thinking about your health and your wellness and your shifts into your 40s. It's like shifting the way you're shifting into a healthy mindset. So shifting your mindset to focus on not only like, learning how to reduce stress and how to, get better sleeps and do all of these things, but it's also shifting your mindset into longevity as opposed to like quick fixes. I think that's such a big one because I think when you're younger, oftentimes you're thinking about health and wellness for number one, maybe for vanity or for things that are very much, and there's nothing wrong with focusing on it for vanity at any point in your life if that's what you choose. But what I'm saying is it almost shifts to like, okay, I've got to be thinking about, and I don't know about if this says for you, but for me, I think about it from the perspective of like, I want to be healthy for as long as possible. Like at 45 years old, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm almost at that halfway point in my life, potentially, right? I mean, God willing, like who knows how many days I have, and we don't know the answer to that. But it's, if I think about it from that perspective, I'm like, okay, if I am at this halfway point, I want for the rest of my life to be as healthy as I possibly can. So how can I support my body in the best way possible? What are the things that I can do today that I'm going to benefit from for my future self? Like what are the things that I can do now that is going to help me to live and be as healthy as possible for as long as absolutely possible, right?
Well, yeah, and I think about that a lot too, even for, gratitude to my past self, who I'm like, I'm so grateful that I got involved in even dieting way back in the day. Like, if I never would have been obsessed with weight loss and dieting when I was a teenager and into my 20s and gone through my own weight struggles and my eating disorder and all those things, I never would have ended up finding my passion for health and wellness, right? So it's like,
True.
I'm so grateful that all those struggles that girl went through. I'm so grateful right now to the girl who put in the work, who has focused on her health and her wellness, even when it's never been perfect, but, falling off and getting back on. And then right now I'm thinking, okay, I want to do the same thing for future Laura, who's 65, and being like, oh, I'm so happy when I was in my 40s. I did the strength training. I went to bed at 7 o'clock. Like, I feel so good now. My body's not breaking down. You know what I mean? Like, it's having
Mhm.
that kind of, I think, relationship with health, but it's hard to get there if you've never
Been there
experienced it. You know what I mean? Like, it's
for
easy
sure.
for me to say that because I've gone through all of those stages. So that's why even when Amanda was saying, like, even if you're just like, I want to get focused on my health journey because I want to lose 10 pounds, I think that's great. I
Amazing.
think get in there,
Yeah.
start learning, get into the gym, because it doesn't matter how you get in there. Once you're in there and you start feeling better and you start seeing the benefits of focusing on it,
Mhm.
that's when it becomes motivating and addicting, right? And then you're like, I want to keep doing this. It's not just
Yeah.
for vanity anymore. So whatever the gateway is, let it be the gateway. Just don't let it be the end story.
Exactly. No, I love that. That's well put. Because I do think that that's such an important factor because especially because there's so much like um not shame, but like it's almost like there's people that are saying like, oh, you shouldn't focus on it for this, but you can focus on it for whatever you want. But I think that
Yeah.
it's an entry point into bringing health and wellness and awareness of your health and wellness into your life. And I think that that's such a powerful thing and it's such an important thing. And
Like
especially as we're aging.
if I never would have been obsessed with weight loss, I never would have read diet books, which never would have led me down, to starting to think, well, why do these all not make sense? To then wanting to keep researching stuff, to then, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it all starts somewhere. And I also think for women in this season of life and this stage, because life is like it's ever evolving, right? Our bodies are always changing, our lifestyles are always changing. What maybe was important to you 10 years ago is not anymore. Like, I just always think too, it's about having that toolkit too. Like being in a healthy mindset to me as well is also having a toolkit to manage your stress and your emotions. And that's one thing I think at this age, I think if you don't have that, it is something I highly encourage you to look into. Because as I was saying earlier, like these stress amplifiers and things that come up, it doesn't just affect the quality of our life, but it also affects, again, our hormones play into our stress and our stress plays into our hormones, right? And our stress plays into our health and our health plays into our stress. So it's like this loop that keeps happening. So if you don't have the tools, which most of us are never taught how to deal with emotions. And we teach a whole section about this in the certification, in the holistic menopause coaching certification around emotional flexibility. Like the goal is not to get to a place that you feel happy all the time. The goal is to be able to shift through stressful seasons and then back to seasons that aren't, where you're not feeling like you're constantly heightened with like a cortisol spike, right? But
Mhm.
there is actual tools that you can learn. We're just not taught them. We're just taught be happy, like don't stress, take a walk. It's like we have to learn how to manage those things for ourselves because if not, it will pile up and then
Mhm.
it will affect our overall health and our goals too.
Definitely. Definitely. All right. Well, with that said, those are kind of like the main ones. I think everything here that we talked about today was really just about preventative care, right? We're thinking about it and it's like it's a starting point, it's a shifting point, or it's preventative care. It's like thinking about it from that perspective of what could I do today that's going to help me tomorrow and that's going to help me in 20 years, in 30 years, in 40 years? What is it that I can shift now in my overall day-to-day habits, in my lifestyle, in my movement that feels good for me now and that's going to work for me long term and that's also going to support me long term? And when we
Well,
start
the one
thinking
thing
about those things, Mhm.
sorry, I do just want to add because we had it on our list and we skipped over it and it's super important.
Oh,
There is one nutrition thing that we didn't say, and I think
oh,
it's
I missed
so
it. I'm
important
sorry.
and
Totally
is
forgot.
is to eat more protein. So just tying back into the whole
Period.
thing of the muscle breakdown, and this is a big one for women in their 40s, again, as that muscle mass is starting to decline. If you're not currently getting protein and you're not, just become aware at every meal, am I having some protein? You don't have to get into the place yet where you're counting or optimizing or all of these things. Just bring it into your awareness that every single meal I'm going to have a protein, whether it's animal sourced or vegan sourced, add it because that's one thing I see a lot with our students and I see it a lot with women who I meet out and friends is that they are not getting enough protein. And
Mhm.
again, because of that muscle mass decreasing and also it helps with sleep and so many other things, it's really important that we add that to one of our habits. Even if you're not changing anything else with your nutrition, just get protein at every meal and get your water in.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I'm sorry. I didn't even realize I missed that one. It's because we jumped to the mindset one. Sorry, everyone. Yes, I'm glad that you added that in and you didn't miss that one because I
I love
agree with you. I
protein.
think no, protein is so important and it's the one food too. It's the one food that if you eat it and you eat enough of it, you will feel satiated. Like there's times where, if I don't eat protein, like if for whatever reason I'm just having, I don't know, pasta and there's no protein in it, I like almost internally like feel like I'm having a freak out because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just know that I'm going to be hungry in like an hour. And this is
Oh,
not,
me too.
it's not doing me any service. Like, this is not helping my scenario at all of like just feeling full or anything. Like, I always have to search for some sort of a protein source with it. And even with my daughter, it's like with her lunches, I'm always like, okay, what kind of protein sources can I add in? So I always make sure that she has two different protein sources in her lunch because I'm like, she might not eat one, but she'll eat the other. Like, I know she'll eat at least one of them. So I'm like, as long as there's two options in there, I need her to eat something with it. Because if not, she's going to come home and she's going to be starving. Right.
Protein
So,
is the building blocks for our body. So I always think about it
yeah.
too. As we're aging, our body is naturally breaking down, but our body's also like it is also breaking down continually and rebuilding itself. So it's not saying it's breaking down in a way like, oh, we're getting old and it just goes through this cycle where it breaks down and rebuilds, but it doesn't do it as well as we get older. So
Mhm.
protein is the building blocks to our body. It builds all of our muscles. It helps to rebuild our bones. It helps to rebuild our skin, our hair, our nails, all of the things that change as we get older. And if we include it and we're getting adequate enough, we're giving our body that raw materials. So, when people always say to me, oh, my nails aren't as good, I'm like, protein. My hair is not,
Yeah.
I'm like, protein. I feel weak, protein. Like, it's always protein, protein, protein. That's the first thing I look at. Are you getting enough protein?
Yeah. And most of us are not. So definitely
Yeah.
have a look at that and see, how can I just boost my protein with every single meal and every single snack throughout my day, and just see how different that's going to make you feel in the gym, outside the gym, everything. So thank you, Laura, for jumping that in because I totally skipped past that by accident. So I'm so glad that we didn't
We
miss
love
it.
protein.
Yes. But yeah, so as we mentioned, like, this was just really about, preventative care, building blocks, and getting you started on that shift, and things that you just need to focus on. These are simple habits that you can do now in your 30s, in your 20s, but you can start focusing on now to start shifting into your 40s, your 50s, if you're 65 and you're listening, you could start these things right now and just start implementing them on a day-to-day basis. Am I drinking enough water? What about my sleep? Is it disruptive? What can I do to sort of like have a better sleep at night? How can I add more protein in? These simple things will 100% help your overall health and well-being, and especially as we begin to age. So I hope this was super helpful for you all. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we have our our holistic menopause coaching certification program starting on March 21st. So if you're interested in learning more about perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and how to support yourself or your clients through this journey, make sure you check it out at fitchicksacademy.com/menopause. And thank you again for listening. We will see you again next week for another episode of Fit Chicks Chat. Bye, everyone.